Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, although they haven't called the second Senate race in Georgia, it's clear that last night the Democrats have won 2 Senate races in Georgia. First time in, I think, 20 years a Democrat has held the seat in Georgia. Folks, this is an interesting moment for our country. And the reason why it's an interesting moment in our country is because we just held a presidential election whose outcome will be decided, I guess, today. We're going to see what Vice President Pence in Congress does when they count the electoral votes. But you know, we've reached this very interesting point in our country. And I'm going to put up a map on the screen, and this reflects, red reflects where Republicans voted for Trump, blue reflects where Democrats voted for Biden. But here's where we are in the country, and it's really weird. And it's this. We are now a country divided up between the cities and the country. The suburbs, if the suburb is close to the city, they're with the city. If the suburbs are near the country, they're with the country folks. But that's where we are. You can look at this map and you can look at what's going on around this country. I mean, look, last night, those 2 senators, new senators, don't win without Atlanta. Now, the reason why I find this very interesting is because what goes on in these cities. Yesterday it was announced that St. Louis, record number of murders. So let's go around the country. New York City, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California. 3 big ones, right? Ask yourself this question. How well are those cities ran? Baltimore? You can go all around the country. These big Democratic cities are ran god-awful. They're in debt. There's high murder rates. The police are under stress. They're disasters. They are complete disasters. And the people that live in those cities are voting and electing Joe Biden and half the Senate. Half the Senate. It's kind of scary. There's this total disconnect, and it's cities versus country. And you know what? Another thing that applies to those people living in those cities, they want to be taken care of. They want socialism. They want universal everything. They want the government to take care of them. Where does the government get all their money? From the taxpayers and borrowing it. Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, I've used this analogy in the past and I want to use it again. There are 2 kinds of people in this country, people who are pulling the wagon and people who are riding in the wagon. And when the time comes when there's too many people in the wagon for the pullers to pull, we're in trouble. And the question becomes, have we reached that point? I don't know. We may have. The whole core, very core of what America's all about since its founding was liberty, freedom, and self-reliance. Self-reliance. You know, you make your way. You battle your way. You want to be left alone by the government, and you want to make your way as long as you don't harm anybody else along the way. That's what it's supposed to be about, isn't it? Think about that. Laws are to protect us from each other. So as long as you don't hurt anybody else, be self-reliant, make your own way. Well, there is an increasing number of people in this country that want to be completely government take care of me. Give me. I deserve this. I deserve this. Deserve it. Why? And you know, you've heard me say this constantly. We can all agree that elderly people need to be taken care of. We get that. Really disabled people, we get that. We're all the same. We all agree with that. Let me tell you something else, too, that ought to scare the hell out of you. These people who run for these offices, for Congress and Senate, I mean, this Ossoff guy, really? I mean, the experience that these people have. But you know what they crave and what they get? Power to spend incredible amounts of money. Let me put this in perspective because nobody talks about this. Do you realize that Amazon, okay, he's worth what? 100 billion now? I don't know what it is. Folks, our national budget is like $4 trillion. So if you are Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, your power is much greater than old Jeff Bezos at Amazon. It truly is. So we elect people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and they have that kind of power. You ask yourself, why do these people want to run for a $200,000 office? That's why. The power. And we have Nimrods in power. The whole swamp. The elected officials, the bureaucratic officials, swamp. And Trump tried to change it all. I listened to Tucker Carlson's speech last night where he said, why did the Republicans let this happen? You know, where are the Republicans when America was changing and all the things the Democrats planned to do to change everything? Well, let me tell you what. The Republican Party is filled with wimpy non-fighters. They're filled with McCains and Romneys. That's the Republican. Folks, Trump, all these people going to Washington today, they might be registered Republicans, but these aren't the Republican establishment people. The Republican establishment brings squirt guns to real gunfights in politics. They do. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the political gangsters, and their media gangster friends. By the way, just think about that. Think about the in-kind contributions for 4 years of the national media pounding Trump. They ought to be charged with a campaign violation. But see, they don't fight. The Trump supporters like you and I, we hate the Republican Party. We hate the Democratic Party. Trump's entire movement is Trump. He's the only one, he and his supporters are the only ones that get it and fight. The reason why Trump beat Hillary Clinton, and none of them other guys would have beat Hillary Clinton, is Trump called it the way it needed to be called. He said what needed to be said. It resonated with all of his supporters, like you and me. So we now have a country where half of the country is okay with all this craziness. All the climate control, all the socialism. You know, they even talk about changing our flag. I mean, it is half the country's against it, but in that half the country that's against it, probably only half of that half is willing to fight. Because the old guard Republican, Mitt Romney's, Mitt Romney couldn't draw a crowd of 6 people at a fish fry on a Friday night in his hometown. Trump has 1 million people going to Washington today. So, ladies and gentlemen, the American Jury and Bulldog Nation, I don't know what it all means. It's too early to tell. You've got a Democratic senator like Manchin from West Virginia that, based upon what he decides, he said he's not for packing the Supreme Court. But if you ever notice, the Democrats go lockstep. Republicans don't. So what last night means for this country doesn't look very good. Time will tell. Weird things happen. I've lived 57 years and I've learned that. You never know who dies, who retires, who gets caught up in a scandal, who has to resign. Weird stuff happens. It's called life. But ladies and gentlemen, the American Enduring Bulldog Nation, I stand with Trump. I stand with the Trump supporters. I stand for self-reliance. I don't want more taxes, more regulation, more national debt. I want liberty, freedom, the pursuit of happiness. I want to be able to get up every morning and go live a dream, work for a dream. I'm willing to work hard for it, stay up night. I don't want anything from the government. I don't want anything from them. I want to be self-reliant. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. God bless America. May God keep her.